Okay, so we are really lucky to be hearing from the Tree Spotters today. The Tree Spotters are our 2021 Pheno champions, and Samantha had the great idea to invite them to tell us a little bit about their program. It's a new thing we're doing where we're highlighting different local phenology programs. And that idea is to give you guys a chance to share about your programs, and then other people can ask you questions about what you're doing and learn from you. And then also you guys can ask questions too if you have things that you'd like advice about, or certain questions that you have. So that is the plan today. But I think first we'll start out with just going around, in case people don't know each other. You can just say where you're from, anything you want to share about your programs, any updates or things like that. So who wants to go first?
Shall we? I'll say it. This is Kevin of Kevin and Beth Mahar. Sue's really was the one who got this all rolling, and we joined up the first group, so this is sort of our 7th anniversary. We started up right in the middle of May in 2015 with the Tree Spotters, and we've enjoyed it quite a bit, and we've spotted a lot of trees and probably made a few incorrect observations, but the world will survive.
Thank you so much for being here. Should we go over to Sue? It's nice to see you.
Likewise. Yeah, so as Kevin was saying, I was part of the team that started the program. I didn't start the program. I was part of the initial team, and I was the volunteer coordinator for the group. So yeah, and as Kevin was also saying, we started in the middle of May, which looking at trees that had already done a certain number of phenophases, and we didn't have a clue. So that first year was a big learning experience, but and that was what 2015?
Yes.
Yeah, 2015. Yeah. So by 2016, we kind of had our feet underneath us. So.
Yeah, often the first year is difficult, and we do recommend not even answering all the questions sometimes, because things like trying to answer questions about tree canopy can be really hard if you've never seen your tree at full canopy. So right. It definitely takes a year to get used to things.
It makes a big difference. And of course we missed some things, right? And there were certain things we didn't know. Like we didn't know that the cottonwoods that we were looking at had 1 male cottonwood and 4 female cottonwoods. We didn't know, because
why isn't this tree fruiting? Yeah,
that's right, exactly. That was the first thing. Like, why didn't this tree have any fruit? Exactly. That was the big observation for that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to punt it to Jerry because she's also with us, and then we can meet the other folks.
I started in 2019, which was the year I was sort of starting training, building up for my retirement, so that I knew I'd have something to go to without, climbing the walls, having worked 120% every day and then needing to fall back on something. So I started, in fact, with the cottonwoods. I was kind of wondering what's going on with these guys. And yeah, I actually was out there looking at them this morning, and except for some of the identification tabs that I put on, I don't know whether kids keep pulling those things off because they're flapping in the breeze and they look appealing, but I'll have to go back and replace them. But other than that, I've been doing it since 2019.
That's amazing. We love retired folks. Like to get you right when you're just getting off of work and you're ready to look for things to do.
Right. And then the pandemic hits.
Oh yeah. Let's see, who should we go to next? How about Nan?
Hey everybody. I am kind of popping in and out of several meetings, but I'm Nan. I work along the Blue Ridge Parkway. We're setting up a phenology program. Our exciting news this year is we've added, 5 wildflower sites so far between Asheville and Mount Mitchell. And so we're looking at changes to wildflower populations as you go up in elevation along the parkway. But yeah, that's my story.
That's a fun addition. I can't wait to see your data.
Yes, yes.
All right. Anyone else want to share?
Well, just to say that Anne is with the Tree Spotters also. Anne, we're just
Okay.
saying
Hi.
Lots of tree spotters. Do you want to say anything, introduction, or anything you want to share?
I'm sorry I'm late. I was trying to get to the right. I kept hitting the wrong Zoom invitation.
It happens.
And I was just there collecting my information at the Arboretum. I'm just following a few trees. I've got some structural issues walking, but hopefully going to be able to keep going through. I've been following the same trees since 2015.
I bet you know them well.
Yeah, I follow a bunch of other ones too, but I'm not keeping notes on them, but I do like to watch.
Oh, that's great. Stella? Hello.
Hey. I just wanted to say I'm not a tree spot. I mean, I'm a phenologist. I feel like I'm a tree spotter. It's been 6 years and I'm in Santa Barbara, California. And the person who trained me is the director of the California Phenology Project. And because we're in California, we have the most, I guess, numbers of potential observations because we don't have snow, among other things. But yeah, so I've been watching for 6 years and I do know these plants well. And it's just, I love it. I mean, recently, I'm at the Santa Barbara Botanic Garden and another tree limb was pruned that was hanging over one of our trees. And it was all this potential that had been, for 5-6 years had been blocked by this one tree limb. So now it's amazing what's.
Oh, I see. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it was just incredible. But I just wanted to make a comment. I just was listening to NPR and there was this interview. I'm going to see if I took a picture. This book is called The Tree Line.
Uh-huh.
And it was this interview, I think for about an hour. And it was just incredible. This man went to Norway. He also went to the tropics, and it's called The Tree Line, The Last Forest and the Future of Life on Earth. But basically he's seeing trees be able to grow further north than they ever were able to grow. Wow. Because of the warming. And it was so fascinating. I can't wait to read this book. So I just wanted to put that in there.
Thanks for sharing that. That's great. Yeah. Maybe I'll include it in the next partner newsletter too. Let's see. Well, Georgia, do you want to introduce yourself or say anything about your program?
Hi, I live in New York City and we have a tree phenology program that we started in 2019. We had community volunteers and student volunteers from the nearby university. Those numbers fell off in 2020. We got one of our community volunteers back and the students back, and we're slowly rebuilding. We on tap for the fall is I suppose you would say, a volunteer recruitment campaign.
Oh,
so
exciting.
We have the summer to sort of think about what that can look like.
That's awesome. Maybe we can talk more about that later and ideas for that. Yeah, I know a lot of people are in that boat trying to get started again after COVID closures. So, yes. Elizabeth, do you want to say anything?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth. I'm up in Vermont and working to get a local phenology project up off the ground this year. We are the Vermont Invasive Plant Phenology Project. And we're monitoring the phenology of 3 invasive plants at sites across the state, so that we'll be able to compare, get a baseline of data and compare, because we don't have that phenology data currently. And we want to be able to have a baseline so that we can monitor moving forward as part of a long-term monitoring project, to be able to predict what's happening with, predict and see what's happening with climate change, and better inform management of these plants. Hi, I'm so excited.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Beth, I think, and Kevin. We're going to talk a little bit more about tree spotters, and we're really excited to have them share. So I mentioned Tree Spotters is our 2021 Pheno Champion. This is an award that recognizes the amazing efforts of a local phenology program each year. And we were just really impressed by the challenges that you all have overcome with so many changes happening at the Arboretum. But I will pass it over. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to share, but you can share your screen if you want, or just chat about your program, whatever you'd like to do.
Well, I thought actually I'd turn it over to Suze, if she wouldn't mind, just to talk about how it actually got started, and maybe, you know, how it, well, anyway, how it progressed. And at one point, I'm happy to pick it up again, and Jerry and Ann and Kevin can add to it. So Suze, not to put you too much on the spot, but I know you've got it down.
Yeah, well, I don't have any slides, but no, as we were saying before, we started in 2015, and this was a project that Elizabeth Volkovich, Lizzie, who was at the Arboretum, and at that point she'd maybe been there a year, 6 months, something like that, as an assistant professor. And she actually, part of the reason she came to the Arboretum was she was really interested in citizen science and that ability to do public outreach. And I just happened to stick up my hand and got connected with her. I said, same thing as Jerry, you know, like I quit work and I don't want to go crazy with time on my hands. What can I do to be productive, right? And I contacted Ned Friedman, who was the director of the Arboretum. And I think he's only been there since 2010, something like that. So this was relatively new for him too. And anyway, he put me in touch with Lizzie, and I did a little project for her. And then when she decided to start up this program, she asked me if I would be interested in doing that. So that's how I became the volunteer coordinator. So she had, at that time, she had a research assistant, Jahan, who the early people remember. I think she was probably gone by the time Jerry came, who was an amazing botanist. So Lizzie would rely on Jahan to take care of the botany part of things. It was really kind of fun. And she also had a student, a postdoc, I think, who was working with her on a different project. So they together got this idea, and Lizzie knew about the National Phenology Network. So when she decided she was going to do a citizen science program, this was where she was going, right? She already knew. And so we started the program with the focus of Lizzie's research being on native plants, and particularly some of the ones that she had already had core specimens for in the Arboretum. So we worked to get the program going up with those plants. We added a few more species after that. We started with 12, we ended up with 15, and identified 5, because it's easy enough to do at the Arboretum. Everything is tagged, you know, it's geolocated, you know where everything is. And so, you know, we identified, as I say, 12 different species and 5 of each of those, and made little walks so that they would also be reasonable. That was the fun part, actually. It's 281 acres. So there's certain things that we had to be aware of, you know, like if you're going to look at beech trees, you don't want to send people, you know, a half-hour walk from one to another when you can send them a 5-minute walk from one to another. So things like that, where we built our routes and got everything all set up in Nature's Notebook to do that. And then we started, as we were saying earlier, for people who jumped on later, we started in the middle of May, which, you know, already things had happened that we didn't know about. So that first year was quite entertaining, and and challenging in good ways. The first thing we learned, though, and I have to say this, if anybody is doing this new, although it sounds like you're all experienced, the first thing that we learned was that it really doesn't matter if the tree has a tag on it, if the tag happens to be at the bottom of the trunk in the back. Because you can't walk up to it and go, that's the tree I'm looking for. It doesn't work that way. So we had people, we had the maps and everything, but you had to actually identify the tree. And Jerry was talking before, what we're doing now is tagging them with a tape flag. But the very first thing we did was realize that we had to do something. So we made signs and went out and put them up in front of the tree. But then, this being the Arboretum, I don't know if you know, it's totally free to open to the public. It's part of the Boston Park system through a really interesting arrangement that was made years ago. And so there's no entry gate or anything like that, and people come and go at will. And so one of the favorite things it seemed that people wanted to do was take down those signs. So we lost a lot of signs. So, but once we got the program established, the Arboretum chipped in. We never had serious funding at all for the program, but the Arboretum supported us in various ways. And one of the ways they supported us was in making signs and putting them up on our trees. So you could actually go and use the maps and see a red and white sign affixed to the tree trunk. So, those are things that we learned right off the bat. And then we also learned that we started out with all native deciduous trees. We don't have anything other than deciduous trees. But we didn't have, and that meant they were tall. And so, oak, maple, cottonwood, a bunch of things like that. And so that was a challenge for people in a lot of ways, because looking up into the canopy, like I did some research looking up in the canopy for a red oak female flower, and you read the research and people say, has anybody ever seen an open female oak flower ever? So things like that, right? So eventually we added some shrubs because we could, and we made a shrub route, and we made that close to a handicapped entrance, so that somebody could actually park at the handicapped entrance and walk around the viburnum or the witch hazel or the blueberries, which were the ones that we added. So we had a more accessible route and something where people could actually be right up with the plant. So that was another big change that we made. And we added things also. So we started out training, but then we realized that we really needed to follow up. So we started 2 different programs. One was called Spotting Together, where we would go out and have a guided walk through some particular area where, like, for example, right now, if we were spotting together, we probably would go over and visit the cottonwoods on Peters Hill, because they are, the fruit is there, and they're going to open up really soon. And I know from all our past experience, it's usually around June 3rd when they open up and you have all the fluff going all over the hill. So we would probably time our Spotting Together walk so that we could catch that phenophase. So we did that. And then we did another thing called focus trees, where we set up, so we would go to a particular tree and have like a little gathering. So something like the sugar maple, which we actually added. Did we add sugar maples? Yeah, I think we added sugar maples right away.
I think, yeah, sugar maples, but the red maples were.
Yeah, but we also added the sugar maple right away. It wasn't in the initial one because of the commercial. In New England, we should be following sugar maples, so we did that, even though that wasn't part of Lucy's first plan. So, I would go and buy cookies from Trader Joe's with a little sugar, with a maple tree in the cream filling, right? And then, somebody would bring some other stuff, and we would sit and talk about the tree, and talk about, like in that case with the sugar maple, the commercial aspects of it, how much syrup, how do you tap, and just general things like that. So that was called a focus tree. And then I started doing regular monthly newsletters too. And then, we did other things. We did refresher training that we added on to those things. So that, I think that's kind of the things that we were doing to build the program. And that was working pretty well. But what happened was that Lizzie left to get a job at the University of British Columbia. And anybody who knows anything about Harvard knows how hard it is to get a tenure track position at Harvard. She had a better opportunity at the University of British Columbia. And she left, and the Arboretum supported us for a while. Again, they would supply food for our training sessions, and like the tags for the trees and things like that. But they were never able to pay for any position, so it was still all volunteer with our work. And then when her graduate student, who was like part-time here and part-time in British Columbia, graduated, it was finally time for them to stop supporting the program. But these wonderful volunteers refused to quit. so the Arboretum said, okay, the Arboretum is very supportive. It's just that they can't fit it into their grand scheme of things at the moment, right? So they said, fine, like you can keep going. And Danny Schischler, who started out as a volunteer, actually, about the same time I did, and worked his way all up to the point through various routes of things over time, is now the project manager for the Arboretum. So we've been really lucky, first of all, because he's an amazing guy, but that he's still around and supports the program. So, when we say we want to have a little gathering to celebrate our award, and could we sit at the back of the Weld Hill building, and Danny says, sure, so, we're still getting support that way too. But it's a challenge, because I moved on and started doing something like knowing that the Tree Spotter program was not going to be supported anymore. I went, well, what am I going to do? Because I was busy with all these things. And so I'm now working with a climate action group called Mothers Out Front, which is keeping me really busy. And I urge all of you to look into them. I'll do my little promotion thing, but they're a really good organization. And they are in California and New York. I don't think they're in Arizona, but they might be. But they're big in Massachusetts, because that's where they started. So, I said, well, I can hang out with you guys, and I'll keep tree spotting, because I'm totally committed to it too. But I can't take over those activities that I was doing before, because now I'm supporting this other group. So Beth raised her hand, and I'll let you take on the story from here.
So I think it was that, Kevin and I, it was just kind of our thing that we would go out and do this, and we really enjoyed doing it. And even though, we did know that the support from Harvard was ending, it did happen to coincide with COVID too. So it was this interesting time, but the Arboretum was committed to staying open throughout the whole period, which I think was a lifesaver for so many of us. And I just felt like, this is something important to do. We've gotten used to whatever Zooms we're doing at this point. And I said, if people just send me emails. So the couple of the last spot on newsletters that Sue's put out, I just tagged something on and said, if you're interested in continuing. And Cindy, who isn't here, I know, really just felt like she wanted to gather 10 years worth of data. And so there just seemed to be something that we felt it was almost unfinished. And I think, I'm not sure, I'm sure Thoreau is well known throughout, the rest of the country and world, but there's something about him being sort of homegrown, and just the journals that he kept. And I think Lizzie really spoke to that, about how she and others were going back to historical documents because people kept track of things. So, even though we're just talking 7 years here, it just seemed like this was something that we could continue to do. And I will say that Kevin actually officially retired from his other job today, so maybe that means even more at Tree Spotting. So it's something that we thought, what would it take for us to continue? And so we did. There were about 40 people who wanted to at least be on an email list, whether they could tree spot or not. That was, that wasn't, they could certainly, be part of it anyway. And so we sort of independently tree spotted because we couldn't even meet at the Arboretum for the while. The Arboretum just, it was open, but they didn't want groups meeting and people, people remember what it's like, and it's Massachusetts, the numbers are going up again. But so then we had book discussions online. We were able, Lizzie came and spoke with us too, as well as Richard Primack from BU, who's been done a lot of work at the Arboretum too. I think that we had, I've forgotten her name, maybe Alyssa, maybe Rasmussen or something, someone from NPN came. So it was really lovely that we were able to still engage in a meaty way. I mean, it's wonderful to be out in the Arboretum and do our thing, but we feel that if we are not, learning as we're doing it, we may start falling, talking to ourselves about things that really may not be happening there. And we read a lot of interesting books. And in fact, next week we're meeting and discussing Silent Spring. And I will say that, well, anyway, that's something else. So, but there's, a couple of the issues about continuing. We really feel like we're continuing as an existing group and that we don't really have the knowledge to be able to train people. I mean, we do have Suze who always imparts whatever she can to us, but, it was just wonderful having the Arboretum staff at our fingertips, so to speak. And not that they wouldn't. I mean, another thing that the Arboretum used to do very regularly is we'd have lectures and guided walks and things like that. That was really curtailed with COVID. It's opening up more, but someone else ran a wonderful program called Tree Mob, where she would, call out, this researcher is in town and we're all going to meet at this tree and talk about it for a half an hour. So there was all sorts of ways to learn about trees. So, so that's, one of the things too, just for us to keep up our skills and also to be able to, have others start up as part of it too. And Jerry and Ann and Kevin and Sue's other things to speak to is what our needs are at this point.
I've already said mine. I'll be happy to let other people talk.
Yeah. Oh, it is interesting to all of a sudden start noticing trees. I mean, I've always been into trees, and I always actually felt that that they are so alive. If you put this is kind of weird, but if you put your arms around one, it's like you can feel the energy of the tree. It's really just probably all in my head, but in general, it's an interesting thing to look at a tree and know that it's been there for 30, 40, 50 years and wonder, what has it seen all that time? And then as you actually watch through the season of a tree, it's amazing the progression that happens just in that 1 year, even when a tree is in disease. And from what I've learned at the Arboretum, I do walks other places and I see trees that are in bad shape. And you kind of feel for them in a sense, in a way that what they're struggling with. There's not a tree close to them that if you've read about trees, how trees support each other, that that this tree is really on the way out, even if it's going to take it 5 or 6 years to die. So that's kind of been interesting to understand that aspect, because before that, my training was all in marine biology. So I knew all about fish and amphibians and mammals, in the ocean, but not have that same feeling that I'd have for ocean going animals. And all of a sudden I now have it for trees, because the education that I've received from the tree spotters is extensive, plus the readings that I've been doing on my own. It's interesting. it's sort of like, wow. I don't know what else to say. It's just very interesting.
Yeah, I I came at it from a different place. I always loved nature, and I was always aware of it since very little, but I could not tell you a thing about a tree. And I would look at a tree in winter, like I was so screwed because I would look at a tree with no leaves and to me it was dead. And that's like the truth. I really did not know. It's like that. I could not. And when the tree spotters started up, and I was interested, I said, I really want to learn more about trees because they're not dead. and so I went to these tree mobs, these spotting together, all these things. And I learned so much. I think even that the fact that we started late in May when everything had already happened, that actually helped me the following year, because I knew, oh yeah, this is totally new to me. I had never seen or observed this or whatever. But I still feel, even though I've been watching these things since 2015, I still feel like it's the first time I'm seeing a lot of stuff. I still get really jazzed up about, what I'm observing. And it's not, and I feel like also that I'm cheat on my trees because I go and I'm looking at all these other trees. I'm like, what is going on? Oh my God. It's just amazing. The developments that are so teeny and you can see it. So I like contributing to something bigger than just my own pleasure. So I will collect the data, but I don't like to sit and read. So I'm terrible about the book groups. I'm terrible about reading things. I like to do things. So I don't know. I'm just so happy that people are still doing it, and it gives me like a mission when I go out every week. Okay, I got to go check on my hickory, and the maple. Like how odd it is to me that one sugar maple will produce the Samaras one year, and the next year they don't. And I still don't understand that completely, but I do notice it. And I don't know, it's cool to me. It's very cool. Anyways, blah, blah, blah.
But I just want to say one quick thing, but one of the things that happens, and because Anne was just talking, it's like we also get into this, like, how close can we get the observation, right? So we have this yellow buckeye that we follow, that Anne and I both follow, right? And we know, I guess it was probably the second year we figured this out, that the yellow buckeye actually opens up very, very fast, right? And so one year, I think it was Anne, I got there sometime in the afternoon and there were no breaking leaf buds yet. And Anne got over there 2 hours later and there were 3 late breaking leaf buds, because they're such big buds you can actually see on the tree at that point. You can tell
there's so much going on in each bud
that are coming out, right? And so this year, she and I both were over there. Now that we know all these things, I actually got pictures from 5 consecutive days showing the breaking leaf bud, then leaves, then the flower buds, and then open flowers, and it happens that fast. I mean, the flowers don't open that fast, but it's a few more days. And we're posting on Facebook because we each have the same pictures from the same days, because we know when it is now. We say, all right, it's going to be like April something. We're going to go over there because it's going to happen soon. You go over and go, tomorrow, I better come back tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I know. Facebook will send you a memory if you share it. Say, last year you took this picture of the buckeye. It's like, oh, it's late this year. It hasn't, a lot of stuff is late this year.
But you better go, because if you don't catch it today, you come back and so
I know.
That's the other fun thing that we've got going now, that we've got a group where we know each other. So.
Oh.
And just to add that by making us the champions, it's sort of gotten us together. We're planning a little party, and we've also got together to do some spotting together too. And coincidentally, Lizzie's going to be back in town next week, so she has,
Saturday, right?
you know,
Saturday.
yeah. So we're going to get together on Saturday, and by the Cottonwoods. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, not this
That was my next question. You said Peters Hill, and I was like, Peters Hill's pretty big. Where?
Well,
Peters
but
Hill.
I did link it on the map. If you,
Okay.
look, I'll send out a reminder. So we have a Google Groups that we're all on, and that we can communicate that way too. And we've talked about doing other social media things. It's just that some of us are more on social media than others, but we at a minimum have this Google group. And I just want to say to Anne that you don't have to read the book to come to discussion too.
I think it's very ironic because Anne used to work with books all the time. She looks frozen at the moment, but she was doing binding and things like that. So her work was totally tied into books.
There's one of the phonologists wrote a book kind of based on Thoreau being a phonologist. I forgot her name. Do you remember, Erin?
Oh, the recent book, I Begin with Spring.
I Begin with
children's book. Yeah.
That would be a really good book for anyone to read, but especially guys. And then I know, I don't know how much into Harvard you get, a presence at all. But, they're going to have 3 years of graduating classes there next weekend, 2020, 21, and 22. Because my son is 2021 graduate program. There are going to be so many people there.
I know.
Harvard. So I don't know if there's some little teeny place where you could, if you want that. It's going to be mobbed.
So the Arboretum is in a completely different part of the.
I understand, but there are people coming from all over the world,
Yeah. They may come over to the Arboretum, but they're across the river. There's this whole thing about the Charles River.
I know, but like I said to my son, who's actually going from Mongolia, where he's working.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I said, do you have reservations to eat places? Because all the hotel rooms are sold out, even at the airport. So yeah, it's good.
That's good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It means I have to stay away from certain places.
It's going to be, starting next week, next Friday through Sunday.
Okay.
Well, so, still, are you thinking that this would be a way to recruit other people?
Thursday.
Yeah, either, if you could get 1 local or 10 locals, or even to get people who are from other parts of the country or the world to be aware of it. Maybe either in the front of the mind or the back of their mind, they could join a group or start a group, or, just to get the awareness out there, if there's a way to do that. I know the Museum of Natural History at Harvard has, I was there several months ago, and they had, an exhibit of bees, and they have those glass flower. They seem to try to be interested in those things. I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably just takes 1 contact person, whoever that is. But maybe it's that guy who's now the manager at the Arboretum. I don't know.
Yeah.
No. I think it's interesting. I don't know. See, that's the question. Do we have I don't know if it's the capacity or the ability to recruit new members if we really don't have trained people to teach them. So I think that's been our concern, that we agreed that we are continuing. Initially, as we continued, it was to support each other to keep doing this. But of course, we think it's an interesting thing, and we'd like other people to be able to do it.
Yeah.
We just don't feel that we ourselves, we've certainly taken people around and shown them things, but I think it would be, much better if we had yeah, knowledgeable person.
Really knowledgeable person.
Really.
Sure, because when I was doing the volunteer coordinator role, I would say I was averaging 20 hours a week over the entire year. Um, and that was just me, right? But then we also had the graduate student who would be our go-to person for all of the questions about the plants themselves. And then we had Danny, who is, you know, also very knowledgeable about all this kind of stuff and willing to spend his free time on it, you know. And now he's married and has a very young baby daughter named Ren, and I think he's still on paternity leave, you know. And so they're just, we don't have the infrastructure to support. Yeah. That's really what the problem is.
You were saying this person who's now at UBC is going to be there this Saturday or next Saturday?
Next, the 28th.
Yeah, so that's when they're having all their shindig.
No, I wonder if that's, no. She's actually coming in, I think, Wednesday or Thursday and leaving Saturday afternoon. So.
Okay, I was just putting it out there.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is if we wanted to recruit new members, I think we would need some more knowledge. That's my feeling. And so I was thinking about this a little bit, Erin, and I was thinking about it in terms of like ask the experts sort of things, because, you know, I'm sure the, you know, Arboretum has it also, but, you know, Kevin and I have been looking at birches for a long time, and we still have questions about the birches. And I remember even talking to Lizzie about the birches, and I said, oh, it seems like, you know, there's leaf buds going on in the fall. She said, well, that's news to me. I guess you know that. And so I thought, okay, you know, as Sue's pointed out, Lizzie will say she's not a botanist, but it would be, I just think it would be great to be able to call. So, I mean, I used to just bug Susie and Danny all the time with questions about things, but I'm just wondering if there's a way that we could, you know, either call or just email or text or something just to ask people.
Yeah, so I mean, we have our Phenophases email that you can always write into, and Ellen Denny, who you might know from our office, she's the one who's designed the monitoring protocols. She has a lot of botanical knowledge, and she also has the resources to find answers if she can't answer certain questions. So I would say, if you have questions, that's one resource for you. I'll put the email for that in the chat. But yeah, I mean, I would say you guys do have so much, this wealth of knowledge, you know, from your many years of observing, and I wouldn't discount that, you know, and I feel like, I think you could train other people with the amount of knowledge you have, but I understand if it seems overwhelming, you know, you're already doing so much with the observations, and I could see how, you know, even just feeling like that's one more thing to add on, aside from the fact that maybe you don't feel comfortable with the training part, which I know that it does feel like a whole nother step. It's one thing to do it, and one thing to teach someone else to do it is a lot. But yeah, I don't, maybe if you feel like you do want to expand, I think there are different options. You know, I think we can help with we could do at least like an online training if we, you know, could bring Ellen in, or other botanists, and do a session online, and then you all could take people out in the field, because that's, you know, such a necessary part of a training is seeing things in person, and we can only do so much online. Sure. But we're happy to help as much as we can with doing that online component, you know, and talking through with photographs the different Phenophases and all that, if that would be helpful.
I think also, that would, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that was the thing that, Susan, I'm sure you started it with the refresher courses that every year we would do. And I always thought that was so helpful, you know, things that we could bring that we understood. So yes, I think
still have, I mean, we have all of our training presentations. So, you know, it's really just having someone speak to them, because those are all set up to focus on our particular trees.
That's a good point.
You know, I mean, it's all there.
The website.
It's yeah. I mean, and that was the other thing I didn't say. Lizzie took on hosting materials for us. So we have, although turns out we can't quite find them all, but you know, they took them down from the Arboretum website where we had everything posted. So we don't have access to them through that source anymore. But I'm pretty sure all that stuff is still available. I kept a lot of it. I didn't get rid of a lot of it. I mean, I cleaned out some things, but I still have the presentation. So like, the most recent presentations are probably the most accurate, and they have pictures of our own trees and all that kind of stuff. It's just finding someone to take over with that. And like I said, I can't.
But I do think it also, yeah, you're right. If there was an in-person, I mean, it's great to be able to view them, but then of course, if you have a question that isn't answered, I think it's helpful to have someone right there to be
when I've trained a bunch of people, but they haven't followed through. But, when you say, I don't think I can do it, just to try to bolster you up, when I was training 2 people, they live in Washington State part of the year, but they're in Santa Barbara for the winter, maybe 3 to 4 or 5 months. I didn't know this when we were just kind of like looking at things, inflorescence, et cetera. I mean, I'm from Chicago and I worked inside for 40 years. So for me, this was a huge deal, learning. And I don't know who these 2 people are, man and wife and a dog. It turns out about a year later, I find out that the man was a professor of botany at like Washington State University and president of the Washington Native Plant Society. And I think if I'd known that, I would have been blah, 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 but here I was teaching them without knowing who they were, about these plants that we were studying. So, and they said I did a good job. I wouldn't have said that, but I'm just saying that because you've been doing it, more than you think you do.
Yeah, there's academic knowledge, and then there's the experience of actually looking at the plants for 7 years. And yeah, it's
no, and I've taught other things, and it's true. You learn by teaching. You realize all the gaps in your knowledge. With that, it's true. I mean, if we put someone through that.
Another thing I wanted to mention that we have available is you might be aware of our observer certification course. And so that's on our learning website, which is also when you log into your observation deck, it's up at the top. And we have a module right now that's called the plant and animal phenophases. And that does get into some of the specifics about, how do you identify a breaking leaf bud and what does it look like in different species? It kind of goes with our botany primer, which is a guide that we have. Are you guys all aware of that? I can put these links in the chat as well. Yeah. And we're actually working right now on a new module that covers intensity. So it helps with estimating those answers, like what % of flowers are open or what % of the canopy is full. And that'll be the last module that we add for that course. So that could be another resource, to send people as part of a training where they can at least do that stuff. I know you guys probably have more relevant resources for your own species, but just know that that's a resource for you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then another thing I wanted to mention is we're in the middle of working on a new website right now. And one of the new parts of the website will be profiles for our local phenology programs, which are basically like a landing page where we can put resources for you. So if you're having trouble with finding a place to store things like these training PowerPoints or maps or things like that, we can host those for you on the website. So you can send your volunteers there. You don't have to worry about, someone else maintaining the website for you.
Good. That's excellent. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, this summer is our goal for that website. So we'll be more in touch about that. And we also are looking for testers for our new module. So if anyone wants to spend an hour or two and test it for us and give us feedback, we'd love to have volunteers for that too.
Okay.
Oh, I have some time.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's great, Erin. Right, yeah, right. Oh, Kevin's got a lot of time now.
Yeah, I'll send it to Kevin.
Yeah, right. I did want to point out, though, the values and intensities we've just never done because Lizzie, I mean, again, imagine most of our trees are really tall, really big ones, right?
Yeah.
And Lizzie was not looking for that information, so we've never trained people on it. And her feeling always was that if she was going to do it, she would want to train people so that she would know that they had the same understanding that she had if she was looking for it for data. So
Right.
it's never been something that we've done because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's totally fine. The status information is very valuable. And yeah, some people like to do it. I think especially here in the Southwest, and I'm sure California, it could be really nice to have that intensity information because things just are different here. You know, you'll have like a weird flowering period where there's only a couple flowers. And if you were just looking at the status data, you might think like, oh, it's flowering again, but it's really not a full flowering period. It's just like this weird little periodic thing. So it's nice to have that information here, but yeah, it's not definitely not required. Any other questions for the tree spotters from the non-tree spotters?
And I was the programs that you have after training, so spotting together, the focus tree, those are really great, even the tree mob. And I'm curious, I guess the catalyst for those, or like the spark for those 2 programs or 3 programs.
The tree mobs were actually something that were very general across the landscape, and that was the person who was doing the education program at the Arboretum, who has since retired and moved on. They might try to resurrect those, but that was they called them tree mobs after flash mobs. So you just never knew when something was going to happen, and they would just announce it, and some signs would go up and say, "Go over here and hear how this local brewing company is making beer using Japanese knotweed," or and I'm not making that up, or you know, hear how this guy has been studying birch trees and is making birch beer. So they were a variety of things, but they would also be like, come over to the beach area where we're having a whole discussion about beach bark disease because we've cut down some beaches and everybody's upset about it, right? So that was tree mobs, and that was generated by the Arboretum. And the focus tree and the spotting together were just things that we came up with in our group to do. Because we realized that people well, it was one way of getting people out on the grounds and continuing to give them an opportunity to ask questions. So it was always supported, usually Danny was always there and I would be there for the most part, and so would the graduate students. So you would always have a scientist to talk to about these questions. And then, I would be there to kind of watch what people were asking about. And so, we might decide to change our training based on some of the things we would learn, the kind of questions people were asking. And also to make a social aspect out of it, because without that, it's not terribly social activity. Because, Kevin and Beth can go together. Anne goes by herself, I go by myself, but sometimes I go on a walk with friends. But if you do want to have some social interaction, it's nice to provide that. So those 2 were things that we came up with to do that. And also, we just wanted to have an opportunity to be out there and learn ourselves at the same time. So that's that they just were rather spontaneously thought through. And we had the tree spotters, actually the name came from Lizzie's lab. They did a brainstorming thing on that and came up with that. I think there was the train spotters thing at the time, and they liked that idea, so they came up with tree spotters. And so then we tried to get things that would fit with that. So like the newsletter was spot on, and the focus tree and spotting together were just things that we came up with to try to be in line with that.
I will just add that this was also new to me. I just thought tree spotters, that was just I thought everybody was tree spotters who did that, so I didn't know it was unique to us too. So
yeah. So who would be the one that would lead those, like the tree spotters and the tree mob? Did that alternate, the person that was kind of like bringing their expert knowledge, or was it mostly one person?
Well, we had the three of us, myself and Danny, who was working his way up the ladder all these years, but he was always there for these things. The graduate student, the graduate student in Lizzie's lab who was most focused on this work. She had two, but Kat was the one who was most focused on this particular work. So it would depend. I mean, like Kat, being a student, couldn't always make things, but Danny and I, there was always two of us at least. So we would coordinate it. We would make sure that we would be there. So it you know, again, that's just how we did it, and it would be once a month. You know, all the way through. That was the other thing we did when we eventually added the shrubs. We added the witch hazel, the common witch hazel, because it flowers all the way into December. And then we added the red maples, which start flowering in March. So we extended our season by adding those things on over time. So we wouldn't do something in December or January or February, but you know, pretty much March through November, we would have something on the grounds. And then we started a book club. So we had a book club that would meet, you know, January, February. But it was all organized by our three people.
Yeah, I was just thinking about how another program might be able to replicate something like that. You know, if they felt like they didn't have someone who could be an expert or they didn't feel comfortable enough yet, you know, if they could maybe find experts, like maybe even look to like a nearby university or find someone from like cooperative extension or other resources.
Yeah.
Where we could get someone like an expert to come in and give a talk about a particular topic.
Right, exactly. And I mean, like I did research, like when we did those focus tree things, there's plenty of information out there. So I tried to find, you know, I would research it and try to bring in things like, you know, maybe an indigenous story about a particular, because there's wonderful indigenous stories about trees. You know, some of the botanical uses, some herbal uses, you know, various things, you know, so I learned a lot just by doing that part. It wasn't just about the botany part of it, you know, just to get information. And at the Arboretum itself, of course, you can find, I'm going to have to disappear in 2 minutes because I have a 2 o'clock meeting. But the other part about it being at the Arboretum, you have the whole history of that particular tree, right? So we know when it was brought into the Arboretum, where it came from. You know, sometimes it was related to somebody who was doing plants exploration and stuff like that. So, you know, being in the Arboretum, we had access to all that information too. All right.
Yeah, it was really cool. Especially, I loved knowing about the use of the wood. Danny would bring in that aspect, like this is really terrible wood, they use it for crates. You know, this is really excellent wood, they use it for tool handles. You know.
Right. So that you can find out yourself. I mean, all that. I mean, Danny knew it, but I mean, you can find out. And I'm sorry, I have to go turn into a pumpkin. But
thank you so much.
Great to see everybody. And
thank you
for bringing us together, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for sharing all your wealth of knowledge. We really appreciate it.
Bye, Sue.
Any last questions before we end for today? I wrote down a lot of ideas. I had heard about some of these programs. I had not heard about all three. I really love all of them. And I'm trying to think of ways we can like put information somewhere to like share these ideas. I don't know where it will fit exactly on the new website, but definitely want to get these ideas out to other groups because they're really great.
Yeah, and you know, I know I've mentioned this before, and I know you have a list of all the different groups that are doing tree spotting that, you know, just somehow matching. And I know there's some local ones, and we did get together with the Mount Auburn people, but I feel like, and this is a wonderful opportunity too to see people and talk with them also. I'm just wondering if there's any other way to, you know, make it as frictionless as possible to be in touch with others.
Yes, so another thing for the new website, we are going to have a map of all the local phenology programs with contact information. So that is going to be happening. Excellent. So you'll be able to see who is nearby you and reach out.
Cool.
Yeah, really excited about that.
Yeah, no, great. And thank you for offering this and everything else. So it's really, so we feel supported that way too. So
of course, thank you so much for sharing. It's been really great, and we are looking for more people to share in future calls. So Georgia and Nan, be thinking about if you would love to share about your programs on a future call. We'll be reaching out to people, so we would love to have you share as well. But any last questions or anything before we go?
I think so.
No, I think we're good.
I don't have a question. I would just, listening to Jerry and Beth and Anne talk about the program, I would really encourage you to be the trainers for the new volunteers. It sounds like you know a whole lot about your phenology patch. And who better to introduce and guide new volunteers than folks who've been monitoring this space and those trees for 7 years. I mean, that's incredible.
That's
and there's always the question mark feature of
this is true. I use that. I think it's a really good point, Georgia. You're right, because I do feel pretty comfortable observing the certain trees that I observe. I can go through pretty quick and pretty much sum up what's happening.
You know, and I think, thank you for, you know, and others also for encouraging us. But, you know, at one point in the beginning, I asked people when they sent up the email, what trees are you spotting? But I think I should revisit that so we could have sort of our own quote unquote experts, you know, who's been looking at the hickories, which I know, Anne, and I think Jerry's with the others. And so that would be helpful too, just to, of our own group. What are we covering, and feel more comfortable to speak to. So
hopefully we've been observing what we think we've been observing.
So it would feel less overwhelming, right? If you have to, like, I'm an expert on this tree, and
or we're trying. You know, we'd be more comfortable talking about this.
And thank you, Georgia, for saying that. That's it. I think that's very good to emphasize that you guys know more than anyone what these trees are doing, and you also have all your enthusiasm to share too, and you can tell just from listening to you how much you love the program and how much it's meant to you, and just your depth of knowledge on so many different fronts, I think is amazing. So
well, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing today.
But we're going to head out tree spotting, you know, after this. So
it's gotten a lot warmer. I was out earlier. It was cold. It's actually cold. It's warm.
Good luck with the heat wave, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you again so much.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.